Welcome back, Defenders. Jake here. The Tsar of Russia has spoken. Putin names his ceasefire demands, including Kyiv's complete withdrawal from 4 Ukrainian regions. So Putin wants the world to know he can be merciful. If we just give the Russians everything they want, then they'll stop killing people. That's an amazing deal. Let's talk about it. But first, I want to actually read what did Putin specifically say. This was a press conference in Russia 3 days ago, and this is what he actually said. These conditions are very simple. Ukrainian troops must be completely withdrawn from the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics, the Kherson and Zaporizhia regions, and I draw your attention to the fact that it is from the entire territory of these regions, within their administrative borders, which existed at the time of their entry into Ukraine. As soon as Kyiv declares that it is ready for such a decision and begins the real withdrawal of troops from these regions, as well as officially notifies about the abandonment of plans to join NATO, our side will immediately, literally at the same minute, follow the order to cease fire and start negotiations. I repeat, we will do so immediately. At the same time, we will guarantee the unimpeded and safe withdrawal of Ukrainian units and formations. We would, of course, like to expect that such a decision on the withdrawal of troops, on non-aligned status, and on the start of dialogue with Russia, on which Ukraine's future existence depends, will be taken in Kyiv, independently, based on the current realities and guided by the genuine national interests of the Ukrainian people, and not by Western decree, although there are, of course, great doubts about this. So the first thing, this is not a peace deal, this is a ceasefire. A ceasefire offer if Russia just gets everything they want, everything they've failed to take in the last 830 days. If we just give it to Russia now, they'll agree to a ceasefire. But a ceasefire can only last for 24 hours, 7 days, a month, a year, whatever. Ceasefires are broken all the time. And something tells me that even if we agreed to all of Russia's demands for a ceasefire, they would break it whenever it was most convenient to them in the future. Putin didn't say this, but he also wants all Western sanctions on Russia to be lifted immediately, which is never going to happen. So why now? Why is Russia begging for a ceasefire at this particular moment? And the Prime Minister of the Netherlands has a theory.
And the fact that Putin yesterday came out with this silly peace proposal shows you that he is clearly panicking. So that's good news.
If Russia by force could take the 4 regions of Zaporizhia, Donetsk, Luhansk, and Kherson, then Russia would just do it. It's been 830 days. So Putin is offering this ceasefire on all the terms favorable to him because he's panicking. Things in Russia are getting worse. The destruction of the Russian ruble, the destruction of their air bases, their navy, all their oil refineries. It's going to be a bad winter for Russia, and Putin is trying to get ahead of it, as winter is coming for the Russians. I also just want to highlight, this is super important, but he's talking about the administrative borders of these regions. So this dotted line is the administrative border of Kherson. Putin is demanding the withdrawal of Ukrainian forces from the north bank of the river. This green territory is... Ukraine liberated this a year and a half ago. And there's more people, there's more buildings and more infrastructure on the north bank of the river in Kherson Oblast than on the south side. There aren't any big cities on the south side. The administrative capital of Kherson now under the Russians is Henichesk. The population of Henichesk is 20,000 people. The administrative capital of the Kherson Oblast is Kherson City, which is a population pre-war close to 300,000 people. So Russia is occupying vast swaths of mostly empty territory, and they're demanding the cities. They're demanding the people that they can't forcefully take. There's more buildings and people and washing machines to steal on the north bank of the river than on the south bank. The same is true for Zaporizhia. When you look at the other major cities that the Russians are occupying, Melitopol is 154,000, Verdansk is 113,000, but the city of Zaporizhia is 750,000 people. The Russians have no chance of ever taking this city unless they just level every building and kill every person. And Putin is demanding a city of 750,000 people surrender to the Russians. Just let the Russians walk in and take their washing machines and televisions and smartphones and rob them blind. This is absurd. Putin's latest offer of a peace dismissed out of hand by Kyiv. Ukraine is not going to surrender millions of more people and their homes to the Russian military. And Zelensky says we can have peace talks tomorrow with Russia if Russian troops just go back to their own country. Ukraine is not their country. Every Russian soldier in the occupied territories is dying for an empire. Dying for an empire that is dying. So we need to touch on how the media is covering it, because Western media, either through incompetence or deliberate malfeasance, puts out headlines such as this: Putin pledges a ceasefire in Ukraine if Kyiv withdraws from occupied regions and drops a NATO bid. Well, this sure does make it look like the Russians are reasonable, and it's Ukraine occupying territory that belongs to Russia. If only the unreasonable Ukrainians would withdraw from the occupied territories and abandon NATO, we could have peace in our time. You can see it all through mainstream media. Here's a headline: Putin promises immediate ceasefire if Ukraine withdraws their troops. But Reuters got it correct. Putin demands more Ukrainian land to end the war, and Kyiv rejects their ultimatum. This is absurd. So why did Putin hold this press conference? Why did he make this bold statement in offer of a ceasefire? And he did it to undermine this global peace summit occurring in Switzerland. Putin's call for Ukraine's capitulation, designed to undermine the global peace summit. Leaders head to Ukraine peace summit under the shadow of Putin's demands. There are leaders from 92 nations gathering in Switzerland to talk about what is the best course of action to end this war. Here's a fancy picture of them all gathered in a room around a giant table, and dialogue is important. Trying to grab media attention to support Ukraine, this is important. But people are saying this isn't really a peace summit if the Russians aren't there. If Vladimir Putin is not participating, then there's really no chance of this leading anywhere. And there's a pretty good rebuttal to this. This is the Tehran conference. We've got President Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin. Who's not at this peace summit? And it's Adolf Hitler. I mean, the Tehran conference took place in 1943. Why didn't the Allies invite the Germans to their peace conference to figure out how to end the war? Same is true for the Yalta Conference in February of 1945. Hitler was still alive in 1945. Why didn't they invite Hitler to the peace conference? We can go forward. This is the final one. I think this is the Potsdam Conference. Roosevelt had died of polio, so this is Harry Truman, but Once again, the Germans were not invited to the peace conference to talk about ending the war. Here's a great picture put out by President Zelensky, gathered with the other 90 or so world leaders and representatives. President Zelensky has this to say: "Today is the day when the world begins to bring a just peace closer. I thank all participants for attending the Peace Summit. We all need peace." Various world leaders gave speeches. They gave their thoughts how to end the war. A perennial shining star is the Prime Minister of Estonia. Territorial concessions to Russia will only lead to more war, not peace. Let me share with you a minute and a half of Prime Minister Kallas's speech at the Peace Summit.
Principles such as sovereignty, territorial integrity, discrediting aggression as a tool of statecraft are the most important elements. They must at all costs be preserved. Hence, it is critical that these principles are also upheld in case of Ukraine. That is why I'm concerned to hear about the so-called peace plans or initiatives that don't even mention these principles. These are the core principles of the UN Charter, the principles that form the basis for securing peace globally. We should be very careful not to leave an impression that some topics and principles, such as especially Ukraine's territorial integrity, are somehow secondary to others. They clearly are not. Upholding these principles is the most important way towards a just and lasting peace. They must be at the core of any future peace framework. The Russian war of aggression against Ukraine has lasted for 10 years. For the bigger part of it, the world has ignored it. There was hope back then, and some are also hoping now, that territorial concessions to the aggressor would bring peace. History has proved that giving up territory for peace has too often led and will lead to further aggressions. To achieve peace, we will have to learn from our own mistakes.
There's not a lot of historical examples in which territory is given up to an aggressor that then led to lasting peace. Throughout human history, when a country gives up territory to an aggressor, it just emboldens the aggressor to go for more. Russia is already the largest nation in the world. They have plenty of territory, and it's never going to be enough. It's never going to be enough for Vladimir Putin and the oligarchs. So these are the principles we need to be talking about: sovereignty of nations, territorial integrity. We don't stand for aggression. You can't just invade your neighbors and steal their territory. And these are the borders. When the Soviet Union dissolved, 1991, free and fair elections in Ukraine, they voted for independence from the Soviet Union. Russia as an independent nation didn't exist for 70 or 80 years. So here's the voting results. Every oblast in Ukraine in 1991, in a free and fair election, voted for independence from the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. So this is the map that Putin is looking at. The Russian Empire at its apex in 1917. And Putin is saying, well, Finland really belongs to me, based on the history of our empire. The Baltics belong to me, Poland belongs to me, Ukraine and Moldova belongs to me, the Caucasus, Central Asia. We're not doing this. We're not going back to the age of empires. Putin and the Russians will be stopped today. So let's check in on the mighty Russian military and how they're holding up in Ukraine. We've got another video from Dmitry at War Translated. And here's what Russians on the front lines are currently saying. Hello, we're asking for help. On the 31st of May, from the cities of Armavir, Krasnodar, and Sochi, we all were illegally sent to the Special Military Operations Zone. Some of us didn't return from leave because they were unwell. We all had good reasons. No one was hiding. We all have a military unit we're attached to serve in during the SMO. Yet we were all asked to come to Rostov for further medical commission and all of that. But in reality, they deceptively transferred us all to Ukraine so we could take part in the SMO. We were put in the 57th Regiment, the assault company. Some of the guys have diagnoses from mental facilities, all documents provided. They're not allowed weapons, but were sent forward as meat. They say sooner or later you're all going to die here. They treat us like cattle. The commander swears all the time. He calls us names, puts psychological pressure on us. We're asking that the prosecution to look into this fact. Let's go with our last names. They then all give their last names. Guys, we're asking for help. Thank you. All these Russian men are going to be dead within a month. Nobody in the Russian military chain of command cares about these people. Ukraine unit captures dozens of Russian troops during a Kharkiv sector counterattack. Kyiv's 3rd Assault Brigade may have established some sort of record for the number of Russian service personnel taken captive during a single battle. If you want to see the video of the 30 or more Russian soldiers mass surrendering, I'll link this down below. At least 2 Russian Su-34 bombers were damaged in a Ukrainian drone attack at the Morozovsk airfield. Ukraine sent over 70 drones to hit this base, and it looks like they got at least 2 of these Russian bombers, but I mean, you can see the damage to the hangar right here, so we don't know what's inside that hangar. Kremlin thermobaric ammo reportedly explodes in a Russian suburb. According to Russian social media, a thermobaric weapon system exploded in a town in the Belgorod region, killing 3 Russian service members. Gas pipeline on fire in Russia's Saratov Oblast. If you want to see what a gas pipeline fire looks like, I'll link this down below, but it's pretty nasty. There's lots of videos online of Russia on fire. Mobilized soldiers' relatives call for Russian officials' sons to replace their loved ones on the front lines. Russian wives and mothers continue these sporadic protests. Now they're demanding that the sons of Kremlin elites send their kids to the war zone to replace their husbands and fathers. Soviov has 2 sons of military age. Why aren't they on the front lines, defending the glory of the Russian Empire? Russian prison standoff ends with hostages freed and the suspects liquidated. Lots of pictures and videos online because these are ISIS terrorists in a Russian prison, and they managed to take control of part of the prison. They had Russian prison guards as their prisoners, but obviously the National Guard showed up, stormed the prison, and killed all the ISIS prisoners and, I guess, freed the guards. There's videos online. I'll link this down below if you want to check it out. Russian inflation rises once again in May. The pace of inflation in Russia accelerated yet again in May, as officials warn huge public spending to support the military offensive in Ukraine is overheating the economy. So inflation for the month of May in Russia year over year was at 8.3%, which is not good. But it's a bunch of factors. Putin is making it rain stimulus with all these military paychecks to get people to sign contracts. There's a labor shortage, a shortage of people in Russia, so that's driving up labor costs. It's all the sanctions, and now even with the Moscow Stock Exchange not being able to trade in euros or dollars, everything is becoming more expensive to get into Russia and out of Russia. Those costs are passed on to consumers in the grocery stores and department stores. So this is what you guys wanted, Russia. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine. U.S. pledges over $1.5 billion in energy and humanitarian aid for Ukraine. Vice President Harris unveiled this, I think, at the Peace Summit in Switzerland. Ammunition from the Prague-led initiative is arriving in Ukraine. The Czech foreign minister confirmed the shells are there. So Ukraine is going to get about an extra 100,000 or more artillery shells every month for the foreseeable future. This is pretty stellar, so make it rain on the Russians. Germany announces new military aid package for Ukraine, including additional HIMARS launchers and Leopard 1 tanks. Thank you so much to the German people. At the G7, Zelensky signed a deal with Japan worth $4.5 billion. This is going to help the security and defense of Ukraine. Thank you so much to the people of Japan. You guys have been awesome. Norway gives $103 million to Ukraine to secure their electricity grid. Thank you so much to the people of Norway. Okay, we've gotten updates on the fundraiser. $600,000 of the $1.1 million is going towards vehicles. And the first 8 of our 30 vehicles have arrived. This was a convoy that the 69th Stiffing Brigade conducted in the last 2 days. 8 of our trucks have now arrived. So this is from Alex. Alex is my contact with the 69th, and he took this video. This is in Kyiv, and these are some of the vehicles that we helped fundraise for.
Happy birthday, JakeBro. Beginning of the JakeBro convoy. Power box. Charging jammers and drones.
Look at all these beautiful birthday trucks. So more of our trucks will be in the next convoy and maybe even the convoy after that. There's other fundraising campaigns going on, so there's other trucks also being delivered. And if you want to learn more about what they do to the trucks, they include night vision sensors and a really cool battery bank that they put in the back of the truck. You can see it from the previous video. But this is Alex. He's my contact at the 69th. He made this video for the NAFO channel, the NAFO Truck 2.0, 4.5 minutes. This is a fantastic video in which he goes through all of the modifications they make, everything they do for these guys in Ukraine, such as giving them new tires and giving them a spare set of tires. I also want to shout out Rick the Ukrainian. He was at the event in which the trucks arrived. He basically just vlogged. This is 50 minutes. I'll link this video down below as well. But he did spot our trucks, and he did mention me in the video.
So we're gonna go show the last track because, guys, 48 minutes. This video has been going for 48 minutes now. Jake number 8. This one is also from JakeBro. There's at least 8 trucks from JakeBro today, right?
Yeah.
So from Germany with love, Stefan. Wow, cool. So the donation was made from Stefan, and this truck is already leaving. So that's been what?
That's crazy. We left town just like, I don't know, maybe.
That's a JakeBro truck taking off to go to the front lines of Ukraine. You guys made this happen. Thank you so much. It's an incredible, incredible feeling. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.